Welcome to DP2 Insights. This is the third in a series of 3 videos focusing on a Rimage workflow. We're looking at the media burning templates data table in DP2. What we're going to do in this video is talk about and demonstrate how we got to the point where we had these labels, because in fact the labels are a function of what's called the CD designer in the Rimage or on the Rimage computer. It's part of the Rimage installation itself. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look remotely at that Rimage workstation. The first thing that I have up on the screen is the Rimage System Manager. That needs to be running in order for the Rimage to function properly. And I'm going to leave it running while we work through the process of creating a label. We use an application that comes with the Rimage called the CD Designer. The CD Designer is essentially a way of creating the graphics for the label for the Rimage, but also a way of defining those text fields that we want to populate with DP2 data. So I'm going to start a new label format just very briefly so that you can see what it is I need to do. So I'm going to use a blank label format and select the Rimage. And I'm going to use a full surface. Again, these are graphic decisions. And in this case, I'll just select a picture. These are the sample images on this system, just simply to let you know that this particular format wizard doesn't really have anything at all to do with DP2, but it does allow me to go ahead and create a label that I can use to demonstrate what it is I want to do here. So now that I have the graphic component of my label, what I need to do is set up the text files. So I'm going to select the text, and I'm just going to select it here. I'm going to right click and go to properties. Now what I need to do in terms of the properties, it's not just the font and the text size and so on, but I need to specify that this is a database field. And the first time that I do this, what you're going to notice is that the fields are empty. I don't have any drop down. There's really nothing I can do here. What I need to do is create what's called a database connection setup. So it's going to open up the setup wizard, and what I want to do is specify that it's a text file, because the text file is what's going to be delivered from DP2. Now what I'm going to do is select a file. This file was created from inside of DP2. It is a job file, and when I created this, I exported a text file out of DP2. This is the image and the text file. And that text file specified the labels and the data fields in the labels, and I'll show you that once we go back into DP2. Now that I have that merge.txt file, I'm going to go ahead and open that. So now that I've selected it, and select next. Yes, it's mixed quote and comma delimited. No, I do not have the header as the first record in the text file. And now that I've done that, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK, now those 3 fields that I defined in DP2, and again we're going to look at that in DP2 in just a moment. So field number 1 I know is my customer ID because I defined it in DP2 earlier. And I say OK. So now that I go in here, I can move it, make it whatever size I need to. This again is just a display to tell me what's going to go in here. That'll be populated based on a connection I'm making from that merge.txt file in DP2. In this case, I'll go ahead and the next field that I have defined in that merge.txt, and this time I don't need to go all the way back, database field, it's going to show me it's reading that text file. In this case, I happen to know it's the customer name. So again, it's displaying what's going to be in that data field, and I can position it however I need it. My third field that I defined in DP2 was the order. So I'm going to select database field. field number 3, and that was my order ID. And say OK. So now I have the 3. These are the 3 fields that are defined in terms of DP2 data. You could include any other kind of text field because these are not related to your DP2 data. So if you wanted a static, sample, or you were adding a barcode as an example, and you were reading the barcodes from another part of your system. So those fields, depending on your writer, would be populated from other parts of your system potentially. It really depends on how you want to set that up. But these 3 fields that I'm merging that data from DP2, this is how we go about doing that. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this. And knowing and having a good naming convention is an important part of this process because there is one point in DP2 where I'm going to need to remember this. So what I want to do in the case of the way we have this set up here, in my local disk, my C drive, I have a Rimage folder and I have a labels folder. This is where we're storing our labels. And I'm going to go ahead and just call this sample label, and you'll understand why I'm doing that. Sample label, and perhaps with today's date. This is a name that I'm going to need to remember when I'm back in DP2. So the naming convention could be an important part of this process for you. I'm going to save that. Once I've saved that, I'm really done inside the label design software. I am going to need to point back to it when I get back to DP2. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and minimize my remote and come back into DP2. What I want to do is create a new label definition. So I'll go ahead and create a new one. And I'm going to call this, I'll just call this sample 001. I need to specify the writer. There is no drop down here, so unfortunately you do need to type in exactly what the writer name is, what you've named it. I'm going to select the label type, and as I stated in the other video, this is the type that DP2 supports. Here is the little bit of ugly. This is my strategy to it. You may have a different way of doing it, but what we need to do is manually put in the label path. So I know that I created sample label with no spaces with today's date, and I need to add the .btw, which I specified before, but now what I need is that network path. So I'm going to go back in. And this is, I left this, had established this when I was working earlier, so I left this here. So what I need to do is I'm going to select that label that I just created. I'm going to copy and paste that network path into the label path in DP2. And I'm using Control V and Control C. And remember to put in that backslash. So now in DP2, I have that label defined that as part of my template. Now what I do also want to show you is the label data for that particular template. I need to make sure that I've built that relationship because I used that merge.txt file that existed. If I were creating the merge.txt file as I went, I'd already have this. So I'm going to go ahead and say new. There's our template. The field is 1. The data is that from the customer table. And again, this is specifies subject information table. For Rimage labels, as I stated in the previous video, we really only can use customer, general, and orders. The subject info data is not available to DP2 at the time it outputs in this particular workflow. So it's an important part of understanding how this works. So from the customer, I'm going to pull that customer ID, knowing that that's what I have in my label. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste that into my data field in this table. I'm going to save that. For field number 2, I'm going to use the customer name And again, I'm going to select it from this drop down. I'm going to go ahead and copy it. And paste it into my data field. I'm going to do the same thing for that last one, my field number 3. And I'm going to, in this case, use order information. And I'm going to go ahead and select the order ID, copy that, and again, paste it. And save that. So now DP2 and the Rimage burner understand the same pieces of information, go into the same fields, and that's, I've now established that connection in creating my label. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So now when I run work using this particular template, it will use the data from that label. Now that we've had an opportunity to go through this process and take a look at some of the steps, I'm going to add a layer. And this last scenario that we're going to walk through, I'm going to take us into the Rimage as well as in DP2, but I'm going to do it in a way that does not include an original merge text file so that I can show you not only how to create that merge.txt file for the CD designer, but also to be able to add an image to it, because there is an image field and I do want to be able to demonstrate that. So the way that we do that is we start by creating a template. So I'm going to say new. And in this case, I'm going to kind of continue the naming convention that I've been working with. And I'll call this portrait image number 2 or 001. I have one that I created a little bit earlier to test this. And I'll call it the Rimage 1 for that writer. So we're using the same writer. Some of this auto-populates. In this case, I'm going to say that it's going to use that editor underscore FMT label, and I'm going to save that. Once I've saved it, I can create, or I need to create my label data ahead of time, and I'll explain why as we work. So I'm creating my label data. New gives me the template name, that first field, right? I need to create that data, so I'm going to come pull it from the customer table, and I'll just use, as I have in some of the other examples, the customer name. And I'm going to copy that and then paste it into this data field and save that one. I'll create another new one, and in this case it's field 2, and I'll go ahead and maybe it'll be my order ID. So I'll find my order ID, copy it, and paste it as I have done before. Save that. The third one, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to specify an image, and there was a macro designed in DP2 for you to be able to do that. What they did, though, when they created this macro was it's set up so that it is designed to pull the first image. There's an assumption made that the first image in the order, based on how you're organizing your export to the CD, is the one that wants to get printed on the label itself. So I'll copy that, and I'll go ahead and paste it and save it. Now that I have that, those field definitions, I need to actually create a label path that will allow me to see the label that currently doesn't exist yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step out of DP2 into the Rimage so that I can go ahead and show you how that's going to happen. From the remote desktop, in this case, right, but within the Rimage System Manager, I go back to the CD Designer, and I'm going to go ahead and create that label, even though I won't yet have a merge.txt file to be able to define the field. So there's a little bit of back and forth here. Going to create a new label format, and in this case I'm not going to worry too much about graphics and things, because really what I want to do is go ahead and just have a label to work with. So at this point, I need to name this label. I'm going to do a file save as. I'm not going to worry about fields or anything just yet. And I'll call this portrait image 001. I'm matching my naming and have some concern about naming convention just simply because I'm doing a number of these in a row and I don't want to get them confused. How you name them and the approach that you take to your naming conventions is of course totally up to you and the needs of your lab. So now that I have it named and I want to save it in that label folder as I was doing earlier, so I find my Rimage folder and my labels. And again, housekeeping is everything when you're saving files in DP2, especially if you're saving them across the network. So now that it's saved in labels, I can save it. Now that I've saved it and I understand where it is, right? What I can do, that portrait underscore image 001.btw, I'm going to need that when I get back to DP2. I'm going to leave this open and I'm going to go back. I'm going to minimize Rimage. I'm going to go back into DP2. From DP2, I'm going to build that label path. So the first thing I'm going to do is 001.btw, as we talked about earlier. I also know that I need that backslash. So now I need to go back and find that label path, which I happen to have set up already for myself. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that into this table so that now, even though I have part of it here, part of it in the CD designer, now that I have this path, I can go ahead and create that merge.txt. But I need the path in order to initially create the path. So here is the template that I want to use. What I'm going to do is I have my export images open. I set it minimize. I have a small, I'm going to select one of these images. I have my portrait image set up. What I'm going to do just for the purposes of this example is I want to use that template I just created. So I'm going to go ahead and select my new template and just save that. Yes, I'm going to update it. So now that I've saved it, I can go ahead and export. Sorry about that. Go back to images. I'm going to export this one image. Before I do that, however, I need to go back to my remote desktop, pause the system manager so that it doesn't process this all the way through to completion. Because what happens in a normal workflow is you'll set both the DP2 and the Rimage up to delete the files once it's done, because otherwise you'll be gathering many image files and so on the hard drives of the different computers. So to avoid that, we simply suspend the production server, then we suspend the imaging server, and wait. Once that's done, then I can go back into DP2. I can export that selected image. I'm going to minimize this again. My render engine was running. As you can see, that's gone ahead and just rendered the one. From here, I want to go back into my Rimage orders. From my Rimage orders, I can see that one at the top is pending and ready to go. I need to start up the driver. Now, again, I'll just kind of reiterate for you that as you're working, you may have all of these things on auto start and ready to go. I am simply trying to keep it manual so that I can show you all the different steps. So now I have success. The image is complete, even though we both know I have essentially shut down the Rimage. So I'm going to come back in here, go back to my remote desktop connection, and again, this is just a way in which we're doing it. You might have all of these things on the same system. We don't where I'm working today. Now that I have that, I can go in and I can create my first text file or my first text node. I'm going to go to properties, and again, I'm not worrying about what it looks like or how big it is because I'm trying to get to properties, database field. I don't have anything, so I need to set up that connection. Opens up the wizard. It's a text file. I want to go ahead and select that file, right? So it's not in labels. It's where I selected to save it. So in this case, it's Rimage. It's that construct underscore temp. There's 28, which was the order ID. Select that merge.txt and open it. Now when I go next, mixed quote and comma, the header does not include, the file does not include header information. And I can go ahead and say OK. As I do that now, you can see over here, field number 1, which I know to be customer name. And go ahead and say OK. So now I have customer name in that field. A second text node. Properties. Database field. Field number 2, which is my order ID. Now this last field where I want that image, I need to select the picture icon. I'm going to move it down here. Go to Properties. In the Properties window, you can see it's picture, embedded picture. You can select it, percentage of original size. I'm going to select a fit to rectangle. I'm going to go over here. You can have position in general. You have other properties that you can choose in terms of picture. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to right click here again and go back to Properties. Now in this case, it's not an embedded picture, it's a data sourced picture. So I could either select the path, but you can see here it says use the data source tab to read in picture file names from the database. So here we are, same process. Database field, it's field number 3, but in this case, I'll select image again and go OK. Now if I want, I can reposition this and change the size of it and so on, just like I could in any other scenario for any other field. Now that I'm done, I can save that. Again, don't change the name, right? We want that portrait underscore image 001.btw that we entered into the templates, and I'm done. I can go ahead and close this. I need to remember to turn on my imaging and my production servers. Once I've done that, I can go back to DP2. Essentially, the process is complete so that now I can go ahead and use that template for my production work. Thank you.